we did all sorts of weird water stuff too. So we had the dunker school. I'm sure a lot of people in the military have heard of that, where you're in a fake helicopter pit and they lower you into the water and they spin it upside down. You have to escape from this kind of the bones of a helicopter.
Welcome to How I Embraced the Suck, a podcast where you get to hear from veterans what life in the military is really like. I am your host, Walt, and before we start, you should know that I do not censor the show in any way. You have been warned. Yeah, I have to admit, your look is not what I imagined from hearing you. a few weeks ago, I think someone posted a clip from that the lockpicking video you're doing.
Yeah.
And I saw it, I was like, wait, hang on, that's not Pat.
Yeah, that's always fun for me when I only hear people before I see them. Yeah. You form that opinion in your head of what you think they look like.
All right, so today I am super excited to have Pat. He's a veritable water spout of activity, and he's a former member of the military branch with the fewest congressional medals of honor. Pat, how's it going?
Hey, what's up, dude? I'm not offended.
Glad to. Great. Yeah, glad to have you on the show. I think your response was the one I was most excited to get. So.
Oh, cool, dude. Well, I'm honored.
Got me the most excited. So. I am drinking Coca-Cola with coffee. Just recently ran across it, and I am zazzing. So
nice.
How about yourself?
I got a Stewart's Classic Fountain Root Beer in a bottle.
Awesome.
Inside my tactical koozie.
Nothing as bad as warm root beer.
Oh.
All right. Why don't you just kind of give the listener a general idea of your military experience overall?
Sure. I'll try to give you the 60-second version, and then whatever you have an interest in kind of dicing through, we can kind of loop back around. So I joined the U.S. Coast Guard when I was somewhere around 19 or 20 years old. I wasn't right out of high school, but shortly after. I did roughly 6 years of active duty with them. I spent that first year on what we call Coast Guard cutters. So it was I was on a 270-foot long boat for about a year. Then I went to, in the Coast Guard, you can go to your job training after you've been in the fleet for a while. So you go from boot camp right to the field. And then you get to kind of go, oh, I like this job or that job. Then you go to your rating or your A school or whatever you call it. So I did that. And I spent a couple months in Yorktown, Virginia, I think, for A school. Spent about 4 months there learning how to be basically a sailor, doing the knot tying and the navigation and maps and charts and driving boats and all that crap. And I used zero of that knowledge, almost zero, for the next 5 years because I did only law enforcement. So thank God they trained me how to do that stuff before they sent me to a law enforcement unit. So I did counter piracy. I did counter drug. I've been to more countries than I can remember. I probably averaged more than 6 months away from home every year that I was in. After those 6 years ended, I said, I'm going to be a cop. Great. Got out. Had a really hard time getting hired as a cop. Hopped back into the reserves. And they were like, great, we'll deploy you as a reservist. So I got deployed. Took a job doing domestic law enforcement up on the Great Lakes for a couple months. Got hired at a local law enforcement agency in Florida for a sheriff's department, about medium-sized. And at that same time, I had transferred my reserve unit to a Florida unit that was preparing to go to Guantanamo Bay for a whole year. So I did a couple years on the street in law enforcement while we were ramping up for that. And then the Coast Guard ripped me out of that and sent me to Guantanamo Bay for a year. And then I came home and I said, you know what? I'm just done. So at that point, it had been around 2017 or so. So got in around 2006, got out around 2017-ish, and started to really focus my time to bring my passion for training and for sharing information full-time. So a lot of people don't know this, but when you're in the government, it is not a really good place for you to bring absolute cutting-edge, honest, actionable, confirmable, useful, valuable training to people. Because in the government, what you have to do is train them to exactly what this paper checklist says and nothing else. So it's an environment for restriction on training, not an environment for creative and successful training. So I left, and now I train people full time, and I fucking love it.
Yeah. So in your anti-piracy and drug interdiction, you've mentioned that you were the primary drug seizing unit at the time, correct? Is that still the case? So, is like just one unit does all the interdiction, or?
I don't know what the current status of that game is. I know it has changed quite a bit since I got out, but I can tell you while I was active, the things that we used to pride ourselves on saying, and a lot of it is very verifiable pretty easily. Of all the different agencies and organizations in the U.S. that handle drugs, the Coast Guard seizes more drugs than any of them combined. And if not, it's fucking really close. Of all the units in the Coast Guard, our specific type of unit seizes more drugs than any other unit combined. When I was at what we called a TACLET, or a Tactical Law Enforcement Team. At the time, we only had 2 of those. Historically, we had first we had 0, then we had, I think, 3, and then one of them got closed. So at the time that I was active, we only had 2 of those units, and in the community, even the people in both of our units kind of knew the one that was based out of Miami was a little bit more operational and a little bit more successful than the one based out of California. So I was on the more successful one of those. And then as far as being at that unit, you could be at the drug unit and you could have 0 or almost 0 deployments. And you can take an admin role, or you can just not be qualified, or you can be super qualified and just never be at the right place at the right time, and you can just never get deployed. So I was on teams within that unit that were very active and very deployable. And within those teams, I did a lot of actual work myself. So we were literally boots on deck, jumping on boats in the middle of the night with MVGs and full auto machine guns, and waking people up and detaining them and finding drugs, and basically arresting the people and taking their drugs. So it was wild. It was exciting. We were highly autonomous, which I really liked about that. Which is way different than the Army or the Navy and the Air Force often. I know the Marines get quite a bit of decision-making power at the lower ranks. But I think by far the Coast Guard probably tops the charts with that, where you have guys. I was a great example of that. I was I was an E4 at the time when I was on the drug teams when I first got there. And I was telling captains of Navy ships that are, 03, 04, 05, whatever, just a cool, calm and collected. I'd just be wearing my pants and like a drug t-shirt, and everyone else would be in their full-on super duper utility uniforms. And I'd go, "Hey Cap, we're going to board that boat over there. Can you turn us around? And we're going to start this operation." And the captain would go, "Yep, roger that." So at a very, very low ranking, very low rank, you had people in the Coast Guard that were making life and death decisions and operational decisions at the drop of a hat. And that is very common in the Coast Guard. So for all of our, whether it's law enforcement or rescue or whatever the mission is, the Coast Guard does send very young and very low ranking people out into the real world, and they let them do their jobs for the most part. Politically, I've done a 180 as far as my military time. But politics aside, you're making a lot of real big decisions at your real low rank in the Coast Guard.
Right. Yeah, it sounds almost like you hear like in the Special Forces community, just the camaraderie between across ranks a little bit. Is that the case, or?
It's what Matt Freeman.
Within your unit as much.
I'll try and answer what I thought you were asking, and that we'll clarify. It's what Matt Freeman from the Status Quo podcast says is the problem with big Army, where little Army would be like your small team, your small units. Your SF guys, your maybe your Rangers or whatever. In the Coast Guard, I was not Special Forces, and I never claimed to be, but we were moving in that direction, and we were basically the equivalent of our service. So we were the people in our service that had the biggest budget and the most training and the most autonomy. So we were towards the top of that spear. It's the way it's the way that we interacted on operations was based on small team operations. So the rank is less important on your team. It's more important what the mission calls for. So we often had positional authority, or what we called qualificational authority, I guess you can term it.
Right.
Meaning,
right.
Hey, this is our guy that specializes in this thing, so we're going to do what he says, instead of, hey, this is the guy with the rank, so we're going to do what he says. So we were very we leaned on people based on their experience and their kind of what they specialized in, rather than rank, which changed while I was in. It became more about rank, but all bureaucracies do. They get every one of them gets worse and worse and worse over time. That's just how they work.
Yeah, it's interesting that there's the, people tend to think of the Coast Guard as like the glorified lifeguard, and then here you are having a job that's comparable to the most hardcore, trigger puller kind of guy that people would think of in the military.
Yeah,
so that seems to be a unique deal.
Politics aside, there's some dudes in the Coast Guard that are very, very highly trained, very kind of the silent professional, doing all the CQC stuff, throwing flashbangs, wearing NVGs, jumping out of helicopters. We have those guys that do that, and they're very good at it. It's almost a shame that they're in the Coast Guard doing that. So the path for any individual kid to go, I'm going to get out of high school or college and go SF. That path is usually a known path to get from start to finish. The path is known, and you work towards that, and you get closer and closer to it, and then you achieve it, and then you're in the units. For us, it's almost a shame that it's our own fault that we don't have that kind of system set up. I say we, the former me. Because the selection was a mess. It was largely, you get lucky to go to those units. And there was a point when you just get stationed there on accident. There was a point when there was a selection process, but it was run by the seat of our pants. It wasn't very structured, and it wasn't very, there wasn't a great amount of quality control. So there's people that went through selection to get to those units, and there's people that didn't. And there's people that got placed there on accident, and there's people that wanted to go there that couldn't get stationed there because of bureaucracy. So the path to get to these highly specialized units in the Coast Guard was kind of wiry, so to speak. So you did have very sharp dudes. You had sharp teams. You had sharp units. But it was kind of hit or miss. And we also had a problem where, besides the counter-drug stuff, and even that I heard is fading recently, which I could care less, but besides that counter-drug and counter-piracy stuff, we didn't really have a mission that met the need for having an SF Coast Guard unit. So it's not like Congress is going, oh no, there's this situation, call the Coast Guard. Like, we didn't have that thing. So there was really no place to send us, even though we had that level of training.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
And certainly things have changed over the last few years. And there's some people taking some missions. I know we did get what we called a counterterrorism level unit, and that was I was at a TACLET, and there was a unit when I was in called the MSRT, which was supposed to be our top tier. But when I was active, they trained a lot, and that's all they did. And we operated and trained a lot. That's all we did. So I think that those scales have tipped a little bit, and those units have been getting missions. But I think those MSRTs got a little bit too big for their britches as far as bureaucracy is concerned, and they no longer are that. Just based on their structure, I don't think they would fit into that kind of small unit tactics world, if that makes sense. There's too much paperwork, too much regulation, too much qualification, too many chiefs, not enough Indians, and it's very much about paperwork. It's not anymore about, here's the team, here's the operation, let's tailor our training to fit the operation, and let's go. Whereas, the more you bureaucratize something and the more you have oversight on it, it becomes, well, how do we document this? How do we track it? How do we add this and that, and restrictions and briefings and debriefings? And it's just, I think we kind of got off on a tangent here, but yeah, that's some of my thoughts.
Well, yeah, no,
I haven't talked about this stuff in a long time.
It leads into, it leads into what you talk a lot about bureaucracy and stuff. What would you have to say about leadership within or maybe under a bureaucracy, as opposed to leadership as it could be without a bureaucracy.
Sure. So
with your
it's
experience of leading teams and go ahead.
So it's a problem with defining terms. So almost any time a bureaucracy itself uses the term leadership, it's dead ass wrong. So particularly in the military, which is different than law enforcement or any other type of private operation, whether it's private or government, military specifically is one of the few places where you can exchange a paycheck for a task. So you can pay people money. They're your employees. They do tasks for you. And you have the legal, maybe not moral, but you have the legal authority to put that person in prison or kill them if they don't follow your orders. And that's the military.
Oh, sure.
Once you sign up, you can't just say, I'm not coming to work. They can go, oh, you're not coming to work? Great, you're going to jail. Where anywhere else, right, in any other private or government, or you work for the FBI, you work for the DEA, you work for the fire department, you can go, I'm not coming into work, and they can go, you're fired. But in the military, you can go, I'm not going to work, and they can go, great, prison. And in some extreme circumstances, they can just kill you. So in that environment where when people don't follow your orders, you can immediately kidnap them and imprison them, the term leadership does not apply. So that would be the equivalent of saying to your circa 1700 literal chained slaves on the plantation, that's like saying, wow, you're the greatest, most leadership-full slave owner I've ever seen. You say it and the slaves do it. It's amazing. Well, you wouldn't say he's a good leader. You'd say he fucking threatens the shit out of them and they don't have a choice. And if they don't do his stupid leadership commands, they die or they get kidnapped or enchained, even worse. So in the military, when people keep fucking saying leadership, they're dead ass wrong. And there are people that can entice others to do things and to like it, but that's not what leadership is. Leadership is when people have a choice to not follow orders. And when your choice is follow orders, go to prison, that's not a choice. So
given the... So if someone's operating in a bureaucracy or in that situation where it's really not leadership, in your experience, was it possible to still exercise what you define as leadership in spite of those?
Sure, but it would be a different term.
Incentives.
So it would be it would be encouraging people, or it would be maybe a smoothing out of, almost coercion, right? So I'm going to use a soft, helpful coercion to say, hey, you really should do this thing, and you can get people to do that thing. Or it could be manipulation, where you say, oh, I'm going to make it so that they kind of don't hate this thing, and maybe they'll like this thing, but still, they don't have a choice. They have to do the thing. And then there's...
Right.
I mean, what you might think is leadership would be one plantation and his slaves and another plantation owner and his slaves having a competition and saying, which one of us can get our slaves to do more work? Well, you wouldn't be leading your slaves into doing more work, but you would be managing and supervising and directing them to get the most out of them. And still that doesn't fit the definition for leadership.
Sure.
So yeah, you can learn a lot about how to get an outcome out of people while in the military. Yes.
Alrighty, and as usual, we had some technical issues on my end of things, and we are back. In between, Pat, you were talking about, you actually brought up the one question that I make sure to ask everybody, and that is, if a kid 16 or 17 asked you, hey, I want to join the military, what are your thoughts? Assuming you have a unique kid who listens to what you have to say, what would you tell them?
So yeah, that's a great point. The first step is, does my feedback matter, or have you already made up your mind? And like a lot of things in life, it's easy to say,
sure,
yeah, the feedback matters, but it's different to mean it. So if you're searching for information and you're not willing to hold space in your brain that could mean that your previous thoughts were incorrect, right? So you have to be willing to be wrong. If we have someone unique like that, which is really unique,
Right.
I would start. I
At
would start
16?
with. Yeah, I would start with probably the thing I like. The thing I like the most, which is the perspective, right? I would ask who benefits the most when a country goes to war. And of course, that's way over 16-year-olds' heads usually, right? Well, the people. Okay, hold on. Hold your horses. Hold on. Let's look at some other examples. So this is from Smedley Butler's work called War is a Racket. And he was a general, and I think it was post-World War I, and might have been post-World War II. Can't remember, but either way, after one of the big world wars, he writes this basic thesis statement out and says, before the First World War, there were lumber companies, and their annual average profit was in the range of, making $200,000 a year in profit. And the 3-year average of profit after World War I started was like $600 million in profit after the war started.
Right.
Same company.
Right.
And so he goes, knowing that, now who benefits from going to war? Well, the clear answer is big business, right? Not little business, big business. Right. And the people of the country, we're basically back in that same situation now, but World War I, World War II, and today with all this shit going on, the actual people suffer, right? We have food shortages, we have supply shortages, we have restrictions, we have travel bans, all sorts of crazy stuff. While the government gets to go wherever the fuck they want, anywhere. So, okay, who benefits? Country goes to war, government gets to go wherever they want, government gets to invade wherever they want, government gets, this is probably, it's nice, at least in today's day and age, that this shouldn't be shocking to a 16-year-old, where government gets kickbacks, in any other term, you'd call that bribery, from big business that makes money from the government going to war. Okay, so there's a relationship here. And I bet you we can get some young dudes and young chicks to understand this. There is a relationship where people in the quote-unquote private sector and people in the quote-unquote government sector have more of an incentive to appease each other than they do to make you better off. Because literally, your job as a soldier in any branch of service is to go where you're told to go and kill who you're told to kill. And if you die in the process, thanks so much.
Right.
So there is a relationship which incentivizes these two big groups to help each other. And you are the one that makes the end result happen. And you don't get any of those profits. And it's also not a shock that military people aren't paid very well. Some of them are. But that's part of the trick. The higher up you go, the more you get paid. And the higher up you go, the more incentivized you are to support the people above you and not the people below you.
Sure. Yeah.
That might be a little tricky for some young people to understand. It's tricky for adults to understand. But the higher you go up in any business, even if it's private, right? Let's say you work for a private company. And you go, hey, I'm on the line with you guys. I'm doing the thing. And everybody knows this that has ever had a job. Where one person who's your friend gets one promotion. Where they're maybe not even above you, but they're like a team leader, where they still do the job with you, but they're also in charge.
Sure. Yep.
And you watch that transition happen in their brain with their incentive decision-making capabilities, and it changes that instant when they get the new title, the new paycheck, the new promotion. So when you work in the military, it's no different. Every single step you go up, you are more a part of the command, and you are less a part of the people doing the mission. Every time. And think about this too, because this is clear fucking evidence, and everyone knows this to be true. If you ask, it's hard to ask a young kid because there's not a lot to pull from, but it's pretty easy to show them, I think. Things like teachers. Would you say, all of your teachers have been absolutely fantastic and have bent over backwards for you just to help you and give you custom learning and make you feel at home? Or would you go, I had this one teacher I kind of liked. The rest sucked. Well, same thing with bosses. I think a lot of people can agree. There's that one guy, I'd work for him again. He wasn't that bad. But every fucking buddy else sucks. Military's the same way. everyone I know says,
Right.
yeah, that one commander, he really took care of us, but everybody else sucked. Okay, so you're knowingly going into this situation where you know there's a 99% chance that most of your bosses, 99% of the time, will suck really bad, and they're going to treat you like shit. And you're choosing to go there because you want to help. So that's something I would point out to young people. Honestly, it's better off pointing this out to older people to change the culture.
Sure, yeah.
I think, but it's really tough. What was the other one I was going to tell people? Yeah, it's tough, man. You're surrounded by a propaganda machine 24/7, and these poor kids a lot of times don't have great role models to explain these, these uniquely human situations. They're just left out. The kids go to school, they learn crap math, crap science, crap history, and they see crap media, and they're on their crap phones, and they're surrounded by what these huge businesses and these huge governments are controlling, not all, but a really big chunk of what our young people are seeing day in and day out, morning, noon, and night.
Sure. Yeah.
So if there's messages out there that big corporations and big governments don't like, they just click a button and that information's gone. And yes, sometimes it comes back, and sometimes there's remnants of it, but the lion's share of the information that young people and adults get is largely, it's only out there because it hasn't been scrubbed yet. So our information is a lot of it's controlled. So you can still find a lot of that, and if you ask yourself the questions, like some of the stuff we just went over, regardless of your age, it's really easy to prove that the military is not the best place to be. It was just on the tip of my tongue again. What was it? Oh, this one. So I wanted to talk about this today. I thought you'd like this.
Yeah.
So you see cars driving down the street, and you always see American flags, right? Super cool. So I like to use this kind of scale of, large support, medium support, small support, like where your focus level is on hierarchy of government. So a lot of people take that for granted, right? We're told USA, red, white, and blue. We're one country. How many people do you know, or how many cars do you see on the street? How many people at barbecues do you know go, fuck yeah, Florida's number one. Fuck Georgia. Fuck Alabama. How many people do you know do that?
Right.
Very few, unless it's for a sports game, which I could care less about.
Yeah.
So, okay, why is it not, man, my apartment complex is so much better than the other person's apartment complex. Fuck those guys. We're the best. Well, no one does that either. And people might not like certain cities in the country, but they don't go, my city's great. Where are you from? That other city? Oh, fuck you guys. Like, that's pretty rare, too. So you hold your allegiance at this level of USA. Okay. Why though? Why wouldn't you join your state's National Guard? Why wouldn't you join your city police force? And that was brought up to me before I joined the military, and it didn't make much sense. So let me get some clarifiers here to hopefully help someone else, which is, and I saw this, and it's because I saw a meme today that was just fucking horseshit, which was, it said the most noble thing a man can do is to place his body between his family and, the tyranny of warfare or something like that. So basically it was saying the most noble thing you can do is risk your life and go die for your country, for your family. And I thought, yeah, now your family's down a member. Now you're not with your family. And a lot of kids forget this too, that you're out, which the military is predominantly male. So you as the man of your family are leaving your family defenseless without you. So you're letting someone else pick up the slack of literally being the boots on the ground to put out a fire, or to teach the kids, or to help the homestead, or to literally grab the gun and go outside when something goes bump in the night. So do you think it's more important that you give your life for your country, or do you think it's more important that you give your life for your family? So a lot of people make that decision, and they're lied to with mental gymnastics of, well, it's better because it's for the greater good. Oh, yeah? Well, ask your wife and your kids that. Do you think 20 years after your kid never sees you on deployments and you're never at birthdays and holidays, you think they're going to go, well, thank God? Well, some of them do. Some kids grow up and think that same thing. But if you go deep enough down that rabbit hole, the idea that it being noble to go to war to protect your country, it is a sick fucking tool that really, really, really rich people that are really rich because of these wars, they use that as a tool to fucking trick young kids into giving their lives so that, big bankers and big government can make a ton of fucking money. And this got pretty dark, pretty deep, pretty fast. Sorry about that, but you asked my thoughts, and I don't censor myself anymore. So that's what it is.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Let's brighten it up. What about your dog? Tell us about Arrow.
Cool. I was not in a canine unit in the military. I was not in a canine unit at the police agency I worked for. But I saw how they did a lot of work. And I really like that it doesn't fucking matter, because my mentor, who I run a franchise of his business, so he runs fortresscanine.com, and I run a franchise underneath him out here in Houston, Texas. And it doesn't fucking matter if you're a canine handler or not. You can be someone without a badge and without a uniform, and you can have dogs that are even more capable than the highest speed of military and police canines. It is completely obtainable by the general public to have a dog that not only does the crazy counterterrorism level bite work, jumping through windows and walking across tight ropes and into and out of moving cars. Like, we can do all that shit. And we can bite really fucking hard. And we can have dogs that coordinate together to bite somebody. And we can have all of that. And what we have that a lot of law enforcement and military dogs don't have is that our dogs are insanely stable as well, meaning they won't bite when they're not supposed to.
Sure.
And that's really common. When I was in local law enforcement, it was more common, but also in the military. And it was the phrase, "Don't go near my dog. They might bite you." And a lot of people hear that phrase.
Sure.
And that sounds fucking insane to me. Why is that okay? Why would you have a machine gun that sometimes shoots the wrong person?
Right.
You would go, no, we need to change this.
That's it. I was thinking the exact thing.
Why would you? And dogs bite their handlers too in law enforcement and military work. Why is that okay? Why would you go, I want a gun that sometimes will shoot me a little bit on accident, and sometimes it'll shoot me really bad on accident, but we're just going to keep doing the same system that we've been doing? That's a product of bureaucracy. It's fucking horseshit. We have dogs that don't do that. So what I like is that we don't base our training practices off of what you would call quote unquote best practices of the military or best practices of law enforcement. We have dogs that fit a very unique role, which is protecting humans and families, right? So be around the family and protect the family. So it would be stupid if we had dogs that did all the bite work and bit the family. That's bad. That's a failed product. So we spend, it's roughly, for every 1 hour of bite work we do 4 or 5 hours of when not to bite. It's just, it's the entire foundation of what we do. So we also do things that are way different than the sport dog world. So whether it is military or law enforcement related, or if it's just the general public that has dogs that do sport things, which includes sport biting. So there's a dog sport which mimics protection work, but is not protection work. And a lot of those people absolutely hate what we do. And that's because we have taken a very serious look at what the mission of our dogs is, and we have built our training to suit that. Where in the sport world, the mission is get the most amount of points, and we trick people into thinking that equals protection, which it doesn't. So yeah, a lot of people hate us for that.
Kind of like sports. What am I thinking? Not karate, maybe karate or something versus Bruce Lee.
And here's where my mentor is he's very rough around the edges and he's very blunt. I'm pretty blunt, but I'm slightly more, I guess, smooth on the edges than he is, and he knows this. It's public. It's nothing secret. His podcast is really good, and he goes way in depth with his philosophy. It's the Protection Dog Podcast. It's worth checking out. But I'll give credit where credit's due. If you're a member of the public and you have a working breed like a German Shepherd type dog, and you take it to this sporting type of dog protection work, where they're shaking empty milk jugs with coins in them, and they're, taking pom-poms, like cheerleader pom-poms, and like moving them around the dog's head to try and get them to bite and not be distracted and all that
Sure.
stuff,
Yeah.
and to do the
Right.
jumping and the running and the biting. That's all. That is not combat, but I'll give credit where credit's due. It also isn't completely useless. Where what we do is completely 100% focused on two things, and they're both at the top of the pyramid equally, which is stability and real world protection. So it's kind of the equivalent of a dog being in the sport world, and our dogs, if we can change that into maybe people, would be someone who's a really, really good ring boxer, with their big red gloves and punch, hook, jab.
Yeah.
Someone that does that, which is a sport that mimics fighting. They might not be useless in a street fight, but I'll tell you what, if they're in a street fight and I come up against a boxer and he tries to box me and I have a knife on me, it's a very different ballgame. Even if he's a pretty good boxer,
right?
If I get one good jab with a knife somewhere, it's now a different game. So we are that street fighter, real combat, with weapons, with multiple people, the whole totality of before the fight starts, when the fight starts, conditioning ourselves to put ourselves in that position of the fight, and then ending the fight, and then what do you do afterwards? We cover that whole spectrum. The sport world goes, and I'll give you one of my favorite examples. The sport world will take often young women that are, lighter, smaller, shorter, less powerful than most men, and they'll give these young women these, shepherd dogs, and they'll train the dog to bite the bad guy. And part of their training is the dog runs and jumps and bites the bad guy, and now is not supposed to let go until death. They just chomp onto the arm. Okay. Right. That might not be useless, right? That would really hurt. If I was a bad guy and I was attacking some young chick and she had a dog with her and I got bit in the arm by an attack dog, I'd go, ow, this really sucks. It's not useless dog. But if I am a determined attacker and this is the real world, what I could do is go, let me take the knife out of my pocket. Ow, this really hurts, but I'm going to kill this fucking dog because I'm really angry. And I knew I was going to attack her, even though that she did have a dog on her. So I'm prepared mentally to go, this is going to suck, but I'm still going to kill both of them. So I stab the dog. Sure. And the sport dogs are often trained, do not let go even if you're getting stabbed, which is odd. So I'll just stab the dog until it dies, and then it dies.
Right.
And I keep moving forward, and now I come after the girl. And so she has a dead dog, and she's next.
Sure.
Now, the dog's not useless. Crazy attack dogs, biting people, that's bad. And it probably hurts the attacker. But combat is a different ballgame. So our dogs intentionally will bite someone. And if they see a weapon or if they feel an impact of a weapon, they will release their bite. And they will circle and retarget and rebite, hopefully on that arm with the weapon. So now it's dog versus human combat instead of the dog bites and is basically just like a vice grip. I've bit, and now that's it. I'm holding. And maybe they'll hold and bite hard and shake a little bit, but our dogs fight humans so that our humans don't die. That's what we do. So during those drills, the sport world will take their dogs and they'll send the dog to the bad guy, and the bad guy will just stand there and maybe make a noise and maybe hit the dog with a bamboo stick. But then they tell these young women, they go, okay, now walk up to the dog and pet the dog while he's biting me. Well, would you do that in combat? Would you send a young female after a meth head with a machete and go, good puppy, bite the bad guy while a guy has a machete in his hand? Probably not. That's probably bad. And then the recall ability of getting the dog off of that person. They teach these young women to walk up, put their hand on the dog's collar so that you're within arm's length of your attacker, and to pull your dog off. And to pet your dog, to pull the dog off, to get in there and fight with your dog. When all of this should be at a distance. You should stay as far away from the bad guy as possible, and just video after video after video after video as these young chicks and young dudes sending dogs after bad guys, and then just walking around and touching the bad guy and insane. It's insanity to me. So I'm fine if the rest of the dog world hates what we do. I don't lose an ounce of sleep because I know that what we do is different because we question the status quo, and fuck the status quo is my thoughts on it. Sorry.
So you got Arrow before you got involved as an affiliate, correct?
That was
Was that
kind
the
of the
progression?
loose plan in the beginning, but then it got more as I
Oh,
trained her
okay.
more, and I learned what my capabilities
Mm-hmm.
were as a dog handler and just basically someone who shares information. Um,
Mm-hmm.
once I progressed in that world, I talked to Joel at Fortress Canine, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna have some free time coming up. Let's see what we can do with this. And he was
Mm,
like, "Yep, Roger that."
sure.
So we did quite a bit of interning, and I'm in the journeyman phase. I don't know everything right now, and I'm not going to pretend to. But there are a lot of fucking problems that I
Sure.
know how to solve with dogs and handlers. Um, that are easy to solve because his philosophy is so solid. It's really good. It's
Hmm.
a very
Okay.
good baseline, and that's the first thing that attracted me to his program was it's it's not just something that someone made up in their garage in their underwear. It's really it's thoughtful because the
Right.
foundation is very strong.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And based on experience too, I assume,
Well,
not
we
just
put as much as we
theoretical
can into,
thinking.
and he'll say the same thing too. Joel doesn't know the answer to everything, so he has clients all the time. They're out on the field that go, "What if I'm with my dog and I'm doing this thing and I get attacked?" And Joel will go, "I don't know. Let's try it." And so they
Right.
run it in the
Right.
field, and we sometimes we see, oh, so the principle is you want to have maintain distance between you and the attacker. You want to be prepared that you want to get your dog prepared to take action either on your command or if you become attacked and can't give the command, we want that dog ready to go. Uh, and we will teach our clients always to send, if we can, we send our dog at a distance and we recall our dog at a distance, and we might send the dog at a distance and then we
Mm.
run the other
Mm-hmm.
direction and get behind cover, and when we recall our dogs, they come to a position that they don't know where we're at, so they'll change direction and come find us. So that's part of it too. And we talk about leaving our dogs. So sometimes it's you send the dog to bite and you just go and you keep going. There are all sorts of options. We don't know what combat will look like every
Sure.
individual person, but if the principle is strong, then we can throw ideas into the field and we can put ideas into the lab and we can see what happens.
Hmm.
And we, I really like it, man. It's really rewarding and fulfilling, and I will be involved with dogs till the day I die, in some way or another.
Are are you? I don't even know the answer to this question or anything. Are you? Do you market to vets or it? Do the dogs have like a um what am I trying to say? Like there's some people will get dogs
Like
to
who's our
help with
clients?
PTSD or something like that. Like what's that?
Cool. That's a good question. So our base level function is we breed dogs and we train dogs and we sell dogs, and it is
Mm-hmm.
there are no restrictions. It's just to the general public. Anyone that wants a dog, you can come talk to us. Our
Sure.
foundation is, like I said earlier, which is we want dogs that will be stable around humans and that will fight bad guys. And we want dogs that will fight and win. We don't want dogs that we just send in, they bite, they get stabbed, they die. So part of how they fight is really
Mm,
important.
sure.
But our dogs, absolutely, we have tons of people that either take those dogs for the family protection and then we'll learn about and certify them and get them later to be a service dog. They'll kind of transition that dog into service. Or we also have people
Okay.
that, for the intention, like myself, I bought my dog to be a service dog. That was our first intent. And she is my service dog for medical reasons.
Gotcha.
But she does, the bomb detection and the human tracking, and she does a little bit of the protection work. But our obedience and our agility are also very good and very solid foundationally. So it's easy to
Okay.
judge people that do things differently than you. And there are lots of ways to train dogs. We train our dogs very specifically because of the role that they operate in. So for people that have dogs that want
Sure.
different things,
Sure.
you'll probably be training your dog differently, and that's fine. We're fine with that.
Hmm. Um what was in your years in the military in the Coast Guard,
Mm-hmm.
what memory do you look back on with the most fondness?
Oh God, that's tough. I would need a second to think about that. I don't know.
Okay.
Uh,
All right.
it depends on what day it is. I don't know.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
I'll give you one. I'll give you one off the top of my head. So
sure. Hit me.
I'm kind of a nut. I really enjoyed a lot of the most challenging of training environments, and I really enjoyed the most challenging of operational environments that I had to figure out how to excel at. That was something that made me happy.
Mm.
Um,
Oh, sure.
so we did all sorts of weird water stuff too. So we had the Dunker School. I'm sure a lot of people in the military have heard of that, where you're in a fake helicopter pit and they lower you into the water and they spin it upside down. You have to escape from this kind of the bones of a helicopter.
Mm.
So stuff like that.
Okay, sure.
Never been happier than knowing, okay, I'm going to be blindfolded and upside down and underwater and strapped in, and I need to unstrap myself, orient myself, and climb out of this thing while holding my breath. Cool.
Oh,
Loved
wow.
it.
All blindfolded?
Been to, there's a progression, but yeah, you work into being blindfolded at the end.
Okay. Wow.
We also did versions of that at home base, just in our base pool, so that was fun. I've been to multiple SWAT schools. I loved the challenge of picking up the new skill and sharpening the skill and going from never having fired a gun before to being a top tier level shooter who was, just making keyholes on paper while moving and shooting and clearing rooms. That was, it felt good to have that challenge and to kind of work my way towards excelling at that, and the failures and, the self adjustment on how can I get better at this and where should I spend my time, and what should I be doing in my off hours to get better at that. I love that challenge, which is probably why I'm in the training world now. I like giving that information to students, and I really like not having a captive audience. So a lot of things in the military are, you're at this unit, great, you're going to this school, go. And you might have no interest in that, but you have to go.
Sure.
Whereas now,
yeah,
anyone that signs up for my courses, they choose to be there, which I like, because I think it's a better classroom environment. So I did probably, to answer your question, the thing I enjoyed most was figuring out the challenges of some operations and figuring out the challenges of learning new skill sets were very fond memories from me.
Yeah, talking about classes, you've mentioned this. I've heard you mention this before, but what percentage of classes would you say that you took in the military were taught by civilians, like a civilian contractor
a lot of them.
or something?
A lot of them. The best ones were taught by civilians.
Oh, okay, sure. Yeah, because that was something that kind of I had not thought that was the case beforehand. I had the impression that it's military. You're in the military. You're taking a class. It's going to be a sergeant or a corporal or a major instructing. You say that the best were taught by civilians. What are your thoughts around that?
Sure, it ties back to what we talked about earlier with the with leadership not being real in the military, because you can go to jail if you don't follow an order. So the civilians are the same way. If you are a civilian and you contract with the military to teach their members something, there's all sorts of weird legal arrangements for how you get paid. But for the most part, as a civilian contractor training military members, you can often go, you know what, deuces, don't even pay me this week. I'm out. I quit. So the nice thing about that is, if you're a civilian, you probably choose to be training military units. Civilians have different hiring and qualification processes than the military, meaning there might be no qualification, which is good. Meaning I can, if I had a training company and I wanted to teach the military, which I don't, I could go, you know what? I need to find the best people for this, and we're going to put a cadre together, and we're going to go teach this military unit. And I have done that before. And I get to go, you're the best suited for this, and you're the best suited for this. Come with me. Where in the military, it's, oh, there's this unit that provides training.
Sure.
Oh, who's at the unit? Well, whoever got randomly sent there. Oh, okay.
Right. So in the civilian teaching market, the bureaucracy affects what company gets hired maybe. But once a company's hired, then that company's going to send their best people for that specific class.
Well, and sometimes people in the military will say, we need a certain skill set. Oh, look, there's a company that teaches that. And they'll put in a bid, or they'll just swipe their credit card and go, hey, let's send people to this place because they're the best at what they do. So you can establish yourself before you provide
Sure.
that training to the military, and they will sometimes seek you out because you're at the cutting edge of what you do.
Okay.
Whereas the
sure.
military, you're just told to do it.
Right. How common was it for those civilians to be former military? Was that a common situation?
In the shooting world, it's pretty common.
Sure.
And I don't think it's certainly not the only route. It's just it's so common that people that do shoot and do like to shoot end up in the military. And then when they get out, they have a lot more leeway. Well, you know what? I'm going to circle. I might circle back to that if I can remember. Here's maybe a better answer to that question. Yeah. In the military, a lot of guys that make it into the very high level SF units, they're very good shooters because when they're out there doing the politics aside, when you're out there and you're overseas and you have no backup and you're the one that has to put rounds down range to save your own life for whatever reason, again, politics aside, you have no one looking over your shoulder telling you, oh, don't hold the rifle this way, hold it that way. So they have the most amount of experience and the least amount of oversight in SF units. And maybe they have a lot of paperwork to do when they're in home base, but when they're out doing the mission and they're putting fucking rounds down range, there's no one on the, there shouldn't be anyone breathing over their shoulder going, no, your sling, no, you can't do that with your sling. We're not allowed to use tape. You have to send it to the tailor first. You got to put in a bid and record. So because there's less government interference, a lot of the high tier level shooters are from the military, but they don't get their skills, quote unquote, from the military. They get their skills, quote unquote, while they're in the military. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Kind of like, here's one.
They perfect their skills because of...
Yeah, they perfect their skills while they're in, but it's not because of the military. It's just because they're in that environment and they figured it out on their own because they had time to do it. Where kind of like a street cop, cops aren't often taught how to lie to people, but while they're cops, they figure out how to lie to people. So people ask that all the time. They say, cops are trained to lie to you.
Sure.
Well, yeah, yes and no. But I tell you, most cops that are 2 or 3 or 4 years on the street and as a patrol cop have almost zero fucking training, let alone, CIA level how to lie to people stuff. They just figure it out because they're there.
Sure.
It's not because they're trained to do it.
Or
like just in the environment.
Yeah, like a used car salesman. There's probably not a class specifically entitled how to deceive a customer into buying this car that they don't want.
They just have to they're hired and they just have to figure it out.
Sure.
Yep. So, yeah, a lot of people that are civilians that teach military courses for the military, a lot of them have military backgrounds, but it's not because they were trained so well by the military.
Let's see. What? Yeah, I don't. If this is too heavy, just tell me and I'll delete her right out. What effect did being in the military have on relationships, your personal relationships? And like I say, if you don't want to get into that,
no, that's fine. Leave it all in. Okay, this is important. Okay. This is really important stuff. You can leave it all in. I'm thankful that I didn't end up marrying somebody in the military, and I'm thankful for me, and I'm thankful to whoever that person may have been had I decided to go that route. It's a terrible place to keep a relationship. There's people that do it successfully that spend 20 years and keep their marriage, but that's not the norm. That's the exception. So whether you're married before one of you or both of you go in the service, or whether you get married while you're in, it takes a toll. So that's my short answer. It takes a very serious toll. Sure. And like I talked about earlier, I do have some very serious kind of moral issues with the military. And I think there's a lot of deception. There's a lot of propagandizing. And I think if I'm going to start a relationship with a lifelong partner, marriage, I would want that to be the most important thing in my life. If I'm choosing, if you want to get spiritual about it, if I'm choosing to take my soul out of my fucking chest and merge it with another human being forever and ever and ever and ever, that should probably be more important than I got to leave for work, and I'm going to be gone for a couple months, so
Right.
good luck. Like, I think
And if
that's
I don't,
terrible.
I go to jail. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
like, if I don't, I go to jail. Oh, sorry, honey, you know how it is. Well, no, then maybe you need to rethink your priorities where, that's a bad idea to join a job where they can rip you from your family or take you to jail. Where in the civilian world, it's, we need you to go to another state for a year to work, and if you don't, you're fired. That's way different. Those are two different ball games. Not even the same game, two different worlds to exist in. So
Right,
yeah, I have
right.
a big problem with that. Relationships are tough in the military. And here's the other thing. You're also willfully working for an employer that says, if you as a human fall in love with another human and it's completely consensual, if you happen to have the wrong job title, you're both going to prison. And of course, I keep saying prison. It's not always prison, but that's an option, right? So there's people that get court-martialed for having sex with, even though it's willing and, there's no trickery, like no rape, but just two people that are dating and intimate will get paycheck docked, will get fired, will get technically kidnapped because you're not allowed to leave base for the next 30 days because you're on what we call restriction, which is basically kidnapping or imprisonment. So that's a pretty shitty employer that I will never work for again, that thinks if I fall in love with somebody, even if it's consensual, I can be kidnapped for it. So I think that's pretty fucking stupid. And here's another fun fact that hopefully no one else has covered. There are other countries that I've worked with in the military that have the same mission requirements that we do. So we worked counter drug. We got to work with the Canadians, the British, the Dutch, everybody, all sorts of cool people. And on their ships, there's people that are openly and knowingly dating, and the command is like, yeah, they're humans. So what? They date. So
even like officer to enlisted?
I don't know all the details, but I have been on deployments where multiple people on the same ship have been in relationships, and it's like, oh, yeah, it's fine. Yeah, we know. So for us, we were like, oh, God.
So it can't...
How is that allowed?
Interesting. Right. Huh. Yeah, no.
Now, while it might be
definitely new. I've not heard that.
It might be it might have an effect on your job if you fall in love with the wrong person in your big bureaucratic company as a civilian. It might have an effect on your job, but it probably won't land you in jail.
Sure. Yeah. Huh.
So, relationships, no. Would not. 10 out of 10 would not recommend. 0 out of 10 would not recommend military.
Huh. One thing I've noticed a lot is your compassion, your genuine compassion for vets, regardless of their viewpoints or their background or I guess where they're coming from. Would you say did that precede your time in the military, or do you think that's driven by your time in the military? Or motivated by your time in the military?
I don't know. I don't want to. I'm not sure I understand the question, and I don't want to take it the wrong way. So maybe I'll say I have a lot of compassion for everybody, regardless of what uniform you wear or don't. I'll kind of give you what I think you might be asking for, which is I do have a lot of compassion for people that are stuck in that field and that want to get out. I actually was just planning on doing an episode on this this week. A very common question I get is from people in the military that say, I hate it, I hate it, I hate it, but where will I get my identity from if I leave? And that breaks my heart that so many people are in the position of, I get value internally, I feel value from the uniform that I wear. And if I can't wear that uniform, I'm valueless or less valuable. And that is sick fucking brainwashing that people have done, that big government, big business, elites, whoever you want to call it, have convinced people that they're not a worthwhile human if they wear a different or no uniform. And so the logic all breaks down everywhere, which is you're right. So earlier we talked about you are putting your body in harm's way for your country, for the greater good, right? And that would only work if the greater good is more important than your body, right? So you love your countries and your countrymen so much that you want to protect people you've never even met because they're so important, their lives, that you're going to risk your life to protect them. If we think that that statement is true, then if you take your uniform off, aren't you now one of the people that needs defending?
Yeah.
So aren't you, why did the scales tip? Because you're telling me that you think you're more important because you wear a uniform, but you also say you're wearing a uniform because the other people in my country are more important than me. You see how those scales don't even out?
Yeah.
So if you ask it a different way,
that's
you can
pretty
kind
deep.
of trick someone's brain into admitting that, which is, whose life is more important, yours or the public? And they'll go, well, obviously it's a tough question, but you rephrase it a different way. You're joining the military because you value the lives of your countrymen, and you're willing to lay your life down on the line to protect them, your countrymen. Yes. Okay. So you are taking a risk so that other people don't have to. Yes. So those other people are of such high value that it is worth possibly your life ending. Yeah. And then you change it a different way and you go, you're out on an operation, and in tactical schools they'll tell you have to make the decision that means you go home at the end of the day. Well, that's different than what we've been taught, right? I'm supposed to lay my life down on the line willingly. So, and cops say this all the time. Well, my job is to go home at the end of the night. Well, no. You said you signed up because you want to protect your community. And now it's, I have to go home at the end of the night. Well, which one is it? What if your community, it would be better if you didn't go home at the end of the night? Then what? Okay, both those things can't be true at the same time.
Sure.
So,
sure.
I'll try and bring it full circle back to, people ask me all the time, where do I find my value if I take this uniform off? So that's part of my life's mission, is to help people with that. So I try to tell people in any bureaucracy, especially the ones that will kidnap you if you don't follow the right order, I would start a fucking side hustle tonight. Not tomorrow, not by Friday, not after Christmas, not after New Year's. I would say, what is something I enjoy doing? Okay, let me start doing more of that and figuring out how to make money doing it. Can I make $1 doing that by the end of the month? And it doesn't have to be a replacement of your income, but you need to learn the value of voluntarily having people give you their money for a product or a service that you provide voluntarily. Because in the military, this is weird, a lot of people never heard this, but you can spend 20 or 30 years in the military and never have earned a single dollar voluntarily. Meaning, if people don't pay their taxes, men with guns will show up and they'll figure that out for you. So in the military, you don't get paid because you provide a service that people willingly pay for. You get paid because the government says, pay your taxes or we'll kill you. So it's very weird to take military people and go earn some money.
Right.
And they go, I get paid. And I go, no, not the same. Go earn some money. You earn money and ask people to pay you for it and see what happens. And it's a whole different world. So I would tell you, start a side hustle. Start changing the fucking diodes in your brain to understanding the value that you can give to other people and the value they can give you in return voluntarily, which I think is much better than the value I receive in a paycheck as a military member. And people don't have a choice. They have to pay me no matter what. So yeah, there's definitely a value switch. 100%. They're not wrong. There is a change in value. You wear that uniform and you get paid no matter what. Even if the people you're protecting can't pay their bills, they still got to pay your bills. So does that sound like you're helping your community? If I told my local cop, bro, I'm really tight on money this month, is he going to go, you know what, just don't pay my salary this month? Or do you think he's going to go, I'm here because the city told me there's a warrant for your arrest because you failed to pay your taxes? So yeah, this might be your worst fucking ever episode, and people might never listen to you again, and I'm really sorry about that, but that's how I feel.
Yep. No. If people don't like what they hear, they can go elsewhere. It's That's how it is. There, and that is. I remember you talking about that. How in so two concepts. How if people don't like this show, there's tons of other ones they can listen to, and that no offense. At the same time, I remember you talking about how if I don't remember specifically, but you said something like if somebody enjoys painting garden gnomes, there's a market out there for that. There's people that are interested with the internet. Just your kind of your motivational aspect of it of what if you do something that you really enjoy, there's probably people out there that will be willing to pay you for it. At least something, you know. And then like you say, just changing that mindset, even if it's somebody in say a corporate type job where their whole life their only income has been the paycheck, to transfer that mindset to one of as you say, just generating your own income or a portion of your own income, but something that you generate yourself, that's a real switch mentally from just accepting a paycheck. Or I'm not demeaning it necessarily, but it's a different it's a different type of mindset.
Yeah, I don't think that's a bad thing if you collect a paycheck from a private bureaucracy. I just also, it's different than you creating value and someone voluntarily paying you for that value. That's all.
Right.
It's just a shift in mindset.
One question I had, given your switch in philosophy from when you were in till now, and again, this may be heavy, I don't know. But
let's do it.
How have you dealt with your time in the military mentally? What you did? I mean, I'm not saying you like went around and murder people, but just what you were involved in. How have you dealt with that now that your philosophy is a complete 180 from that? It seems if I'm expert at nothing else, I'm expert at asking confusing questions. So
no, that's perfect. I understood perfectly.
Clarify
that's actually
away.
One of the best questions tonight.
Okay. Nice burn.
No, come on.
No, I'm just kidding.
That was in good jest. I understand perfectly. I think all that people can do is make the best decision with both their head and their heart, based off of the best information that they have. So I also have a lot of grace for people that are still out there and that are actively murdering people that are innocent. I get you can still do something fucking terrible, and I can still understand how you made that decision. So that's tough.
Okay, sure.
I'll give you an example. So there's something I kind of cite called victimizing someone else in self-defense, which is strange. So the people that turned on the ovens in, Auschwitz, whatever, the concentration camps, right? The ones that either shot or arrested or imprisoned or whipped or chained the Jews in the Holocaust. If you show up to work and they go, hey, we need you to turn on the gas and murder all these people in the oven, whatever. And you go, no, I'm not doing that. You're a terrible human. I'm going to fight you and or quit and or I'm out of here. What do you think is going to happen to that German soldier? Probably nothing good. Probably imprisonment or death. Or at a minimum, maybe gets fired and discharged and just doesn't have a job, which sucks. But there are a lot of, in a strange fucking way, in the military, can't do that either. So if you have a moral issue with doing your job in the military, you can't just walk away. So there are people that will face imprisonment or death if they don't go murder people in other countries. So once you're kind of tricked into that, I get that you're stuck. I totally get it. So it's really a catch-22, and it's unfortunate. The best I would hope for those people that are in that position, and I talk to a lot of them that say, I'm stuck and I hate it. What do I do? I say, well, if you do nothing and you just continue writing it out for a paycheck, that makes you a bad person. But now that you know what situation you're in, and now that you morally have an issue with it, you had better be fucking actively working towards a solution, whether that solution is, a plethora of ideas, whether it's I'm going to work on getting discharged, or I'm just not going to re-up no matter what, or I'm going to volunteer as much as I can to be in an admin position and to not go murder people. But you should be taking those steps to get to where you morally feel better about it. And that might be
I see what you're saying.
Changing your profession. But yeah, it ties into what we talked about earlier. There's people that say, I like this, I like the paycheck, I like the perks, I'm almost to my retirement, but I morally disagree with everything I'm doing. And I go, well, that's your fault. If you're still choosing to get that retirement instead of doing what is morally right, then that's on you. I fucking can't help you.
Sure. Yeah. If you see that something you're doing is wrong and you take no steps to minimize the impact of what you're doing, then at that point, you definitely bear culpability.
And of course, there's all sorts of gray areas. There's oh shit, I just came to this realization, and I retire in 6 months. Okay, well, no matter what you do,
right,
it's probably faster to get to your retirement and leave than to start fighting the system and rocking the boat and risking going to prison. And I get that there are gray areas, but the person that goes 9 years in that goes, holy shit, I just understood what we really do here. This is terrible. And they go, well, I'll just sign 3 or 4 or 5 more contracts for the next 11 years. And that's bad. That's really bad.
Sure. Yeah.
What if we rephrase it, I think you can get everyone to agree to that, where what if you got tricked into working for the local mafia and you found out, oh, they really just make themselves more rich and they make you go out and murder people. And I'm like, you just realized that. And they go, yeah. And I go, what are you going to do now? And they go, well, I'll keep working for the mafia and murdering people a little bit. Like, that's bad. We know that. That's clear. So I think the perspective is a big part of it.
Yeah. Well, let's see. You've got you've mentioned a few of these things, but you've got a show, you've got books, you've got dogs, you've got a class. Go ahead and tell the listener if for some reason they lasted this long through the show and want to hear more of you and less of me, which I'm sure they want to hear less of me. That goes without saying. But if they want to hear more of you or find more out about you, what can they do?
Cool. Thank you. I'll keep it short. If you just go over to the website, it's uncensoredtactical.com. You can find almost all of that stuff there. You can find links to the dog stuff, links to the books that I write. We have a web store where we sell lockpicking tools. I currently have 2 books published. I'm working on number 3. I got my own podcast. I got my own website. I have online training videos for lockpicking, but again, almost all that stuff can be found on my website, or you can just type in the shortcut, which is utac.io. That'll take you to our homepage. And if you just want to email me, if you're interested in training or courses or feedback, just shoot me an email. And my email is really easy. It's pat@utac.io.
Cool. Yeah, that's short and sweet. Right to the point. Yeah, I mentioned this off the recording, but just for the listener, your podcast really influenced my style, both in the minimal editing kind of look I'm going for, which is also influenced by my natural laziness, and just your openness and honestness. You think I'm kidding? Just your openness with the listener, just like what you hear is what you get, and that's really affected me too. And then you obviously on this episode, which is fine, you did bleed over a little bit, but on your show, your ability to separate out politics and the other stuff you talk about, like sometimes you do get political, and that's cool, but you are very careful about kind of compartmentalizing the two, except in areas where they specifically overlap. So that's, excuse me, I'm back. I've really appreciated that aspect where if someone thinks you're whacked politically, but they like what you have to say about other stuff, they can still get a lot of value out of what you do. So yeah, it's there's my little recommendation as far as that
Thanks,
goes.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So yeah, cool. Well, yeah, appreciate it. That was a blast.
Cool. I really enjoyed this, man. I haven't talked about a lot of that stuff in a long time, so that was kind of a throwback for me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of How I Embraced the Suck. If you enjoyed the show, tell a friend. And as my Girl Scout den mother used to say, stay frosty.
Seriously, it's an itch I haven't scratched in a long time, so I had a lot of fun.